This is an Italian movie that a viewer actually suggested, and it's about this guy who's a dog groomer slash dog sitter. He's got his own little shop in a not so great neighborhood, and without going into further detail, let's just say he's wrapped up in some shady things. He's associating with the wrong people and getting into situations he shouldn't be in. But here's the thing, he's not a bad guy. In fact, he seems like a very kind man. He's got a daughter who he loves very much, and he clearly loves the dogs he takes care of. But he's also perhaps not the brightest guy around, and sort of small and scrawny too. So far from an intimidating guy. So he's easy to push around and get to do things he shouldn't. Which then leads to a very interesting chain of events that kind of spiral out of control. And that chain of events is basically the story here. And it's all about this one guy's journey. But here's the thing, because he's so kind and sort of meek and powerless, I almost immediately started to sympathize with him. I really felt for the guy. Even when he does some really dumb things and makes some really poor decisions, I couldn't help but to feel for the guy. And I understood why he did the things he did. I didn't necessarily agree with his choices, but I did understand his motivations. And that makes for a really strong character, and it got me really invested in the story. It's pretty rare that I get this involved, to be honest. I was genuinely anxious for the guy. Because here's another thing this movie does exceptionally well. It gets very intense at times, and for most of the movie it's actually intense. There's very little reprieve from that sort of raw intensity it has. Especially in that later part of the movie when it really gets going. And a lot of that has to do with the writing, because it's a well-written movie. But most of it is down to the way it's shot and especially the acting. There's no fancy tricks going on when it comes to the filmmaking. It's just very straightforward but effective. It did exactly what it needed to do. But the main performance here is just fantastic. This guy Marcello Fonte nailed it. He completely sold me on the character every step of the way. And he's probably the biggest reason this movie is so gripping and compelling. But I also have to hand it to Edoardo Pesci, who essentially plays a bully. He's just a big guy who's used to getting his way. And he's genuinely scary. Like, he's intimidating. And without that character being as convincing as he was, the main character's weakness in comparison wouldn't be as convincing. And I feel like most of us have probably known a person like this, growing up, if not as an adult. Basically a bully who just gets away with everything and that everyone's afraid to stand up to. And to me at least, that just made the whole situation even more relatable. And it basically just enhanced my feelings of sympathy and empathy for the protagonist. But as far as the story goes, it's a well-told story, and the movie is well-paced too. It's not that complicated, but it doesn't really need to be, because it's mostly about the internal struggles of this one man. It also manages to avoid a lot of the over-the-top dramatic stuff that movies like this sometimes employ. I mean, it's probably not the most down-to-earth movie of all time. There is some stuff that's a bit exaggerated. But the actors do such a great job that I still believed it every step of the way. And I could actually see this happening. It's definitely not impossible. In fact, it's inspired by a true story. But from what I could tell, it's rather loosely based on it. But the general gist of it seems to have elements of truth to it. And yeah, I liked this movie quite a bit. I thought it was really intense and engaging. But would I recommend it? Yeah, absolutely, it's really good. So you should probably check it out. Or maybe don't. I'm not your dad. But I am trying to still out, so consider liking, subbing, hitting that bell and supporting me on Patreon. Because I really need to get myself a prize-winning poodle. And hey, why not drop a comment below or check out another review? I'd appreciate it. Thanks.